The morning sun cast long shadows across the corridors of Windsor Castle as Charlotte hurried through the familiar halls. At 23, she had been working as a junior wardrobe assistant for the royal household for nearly 2 years. But today felt different. Queen Camilla had specifically requested her presence in the private chambers, something that rarely happened to someone of her position. Charlotte's heart raced with a mixture of excitement and nervousness. She had always been fascinated by the intricate world of royal fashion. The way each garment told a story of tradition, protocol, and careful attention to detail. Her grandmother had worked in the palace kitchens decades ago, and often shared stories of the glimpses she caught of royal life. Now Charlotte was living those stories herself. The Queen's private wardrobe room was located in a secluded wing of the castle, accessible only to a select few staff members. Charlotte had been there twice before, both times accompanying the head seamstress for routine fittings. The room itself was a marvel to behold, with mahogany wardrobes stretching from floor to ceiling, each containing carefully organized sections for different types of occasions and seasons. As Charlotte approached the heavy oak door, she noticed it was slightly ajar. This struck her as unusual, as the room was typically kept locked when not in use. She paused for a moment, listening for any sounds from within. Hearing nothing, she gently pushed the door open and stepped inside. The wardrobe room was empty, but something immediately caught her attention. Several garment bags were scattered across the central fitting area, their contents partially visible. These weren't the usual formal gowns or ceremonial robes she expected to see. Instead, they appeared to be children's clothing. But not just any children's clothing. The quality of the fabric, the intricate embroidery, and the unmistakable royal insignia suggested these were pieces meant for very special occasions. Charlotte's curiosity got the better of her. She approached the nearest garment bag and carefully examined its contents. Inside was a beautiful pale blue dress, clearly designed for a young girl. The craftsmanship was exquisite, with hand-sewn pearls adorning the bodice and delicate lace trim along the sleeves. A small tag attached to the hanger bore a name that made Charlotte's breath catch in her throat. Princess Charlotte. Now, Princess Charlotte. Her mind immediately went to the young princess, the daughter of Prince William and Catherine. At 8 years old, Princess Charlotte had already become a beloved figure in the public eye, known for her confident demeanor and charming personality during public appearances. But why would her clothing be in Queen Camilla's private wardrobe room? Charlotte carefully moved to the next garment bag. This one contained an even more elaborate ensemble, a cream-colored coat with intricate gold threading and matching accessories. The level of detail was extraordinary, suggesting this was no ordinary outfit, but something designed for a momentous occasion. As she examined the piece more closely, she noticed a handwritten note pinned to the inside of the bag. The note, written in elegant script, contained details about upcoming fittings and alterations. But what caught Charlotte's attention were the specific instructions about maintaining secrecy around these particular garments. The words, "Coronation preparations," appeared several times throughout the note, along with references to the young princess's special role. Charlotte's heart began to pound as the implications became clear. These weren't just any royal children's clothes, they were coronation garments, specifically designed for Princess Charlotte's participation in what would undoubtedly be a historic ceremony. The secrecy surrounding them suggested that the young princess would have a more significant role in future royal ceremonies than had been publicly announced. As she continued to examine the various pieces, Charlotte discovered an entire collection of coordinated outfits. There were formal gowns suitable for state occasions, simpler but elegant dresses for less formal events, and even specially designed accessories including tiny tiaras and ceremonial shoes. Each piece was a work of art, created by the most skilled artisans in the kingdom. The craftsmanship spoke to the importance of these garments. Charlotte could see the hours of meticulous work that had gone into each piece. The hand-embroidered flowers on one dress must have taken weeks to complete. The beadwork on another was so intricate that it created patterns that seemed to shimmer and move in the light. These were not just clothes but wearable symbols of royal tradition and continuity. Charlotte found herself drawn deeper into the collection. There were sketches and design notes scattered among the garment bags, showing the evolution of each piece from initial concept to final creation. The designers had clearly put enormous thought into every detail, considering not just the aesthetic appeal but also the symbolic significance of each element. One sketch particularly caught her attention. It showed Princess Charlotte in a flowing gown during what appeared to be a ceremonial procession. The drawing captured not just the beauty of the garment, but also the dignity and grace expected of someone participating in such a significant event. Charlotte could almost imagine the young princess wearing these beautiful clothes, carrying herself with the poise and confidence she had already shown in public appearances. As Charlotte continued to explore the collection, she began to understand the magnitude of what she was seeing. This wasn't just about beautiful clothes for a young girl. These garments represented the future of the monarchy, the careful preparation of the next generation to take their place in royal tradition. Princess Charlotte was being prepared for responsibilities and ceremonies that would shape her entire life. The silence in the room was suddenly broken by the sound of footsteps in the corridor outside. Charlotte's heart leaped into her throat as she realized she might not be supposed to be here alone, especially not examining these particular garments. The footsteps grew closer, and she could hear voices approaching. Without thinking, she quickly but carefully replaced the garments she had been examining and moved toward the window, pretending to check the natural lighting in the room. The door opened fully, and Charlotte heard Queen Camilla's distinctive voice speaking to someone about scheduling adjustments for the following week. Charlotte remained perfectly still, hoping her presence would seem natural and purposeful rather than intrusive. She had been summoned to this area of the castle, after all, though perhaps not specifically to this room. As the voices continued their conversation in the hallway, Charlotte caught fragments of discussion about timing, public announcements, and the importance of maintaining appropriate protocol. The tone was serious but also excited, suggesting that whatever was being planned would be a joyous occasion, despite its formal nature. Charlotte realized she was witnessing the behind-the-scenes preparation for what would likely become a defining moment in royal history. The care and attention being devoted to every detail, from the young princess's wardrobe to the timing of public announcements, spoke to the significance of whatever ceremony was being planned. When the voices finally moved away from the door, Charlotte took the opportunity to make a mental note of everything she had observed. She understood instinctively that this information was privileged and that her discretion would be essential. At the same time, she felt honored to have glimpsed this intimate preparation for what promised to be an extraordinary event. The experience had given Charlotte a new appreciation for her role in the royal household. She was not just a wardrobe assistant, but a keeper of secrets, a guardian of traditions that stretched back centuries. The trust placed in staff members like herself was enormous, and she felt the weight of that responsibility settling on her shoulders. As she prepared to leave the wardrobe room, Charlotte took one last look at the carefully arranged garments. Each piece represented countless hours of skilled labor, creative vision, and deep respect for royal tradition. They were more than clothes. They were tangible connections between past and future, between the little girl who would wear them and the generations of royalty who had worn similar garments at their own defining moments. Charlotte understood that she had been given a rare glimpse into the careful choreography of royal life. The meticulous planning, the attention to every detail, and the coordination of countless moving parts all worked together to create moments that would be remembered for generations. Princess Charlotte's future participation in royal ceremonies was being planned with the same care and precision that had characterized such events for centuries. The young princess herself was probably unaware of the extensive preparations being made on her behalf. At 8 years old, she was likely focused on school, friends, and the normal activities of childhood. But somewhere in the background, skilled artisans and dedicated staff members were working to ensure that when the time came, she would be perfectly prepared to step into her role in royal history. 3 days after Charlotte's discovery in the wardrobe room, Royal Guard Sergeant James Mitchell was conducting his routine evening security rounds through the private quarters of Windsor Castle. At 35, James had served in the Royal Protection Detail for over a decade, and he prided himself on his attention to detail and unwavering discretion. His rounds typically took him through areas that few others ever accessed, making him privy to the quiet rhythms of royal life that existed beyond public view. As James approached the corridor leading to Queen Camilla's private chambers, he noticed something unusual. A faint light was visible under the door of the wardrobe room, even though the area should have been unoccupied at this hour. The time was nearly 10 o'clock in the evening, well past when any scheduled wardrobe activities would normally take place. James paused at the door, listening carefully for any sounds from within. Royal security protocols required him to investigate any anomaly, no matter how minor it might seem. The safety and privacy of the royal family depended on guards like him, maintaining constant vigilance, even in the most secure areas of the castle. He gently tried the door handle and found it unlocked, which immediately raised his concern. This room contained some of the most valuable and historically significant garments in the royal collection, and it was supposed to remain locked when not in active use. The fact that it was both illuminated and unlocked at this hour suggested either a serious security breach or a staff member working unusual hours without proper authorization. James carefully opened the door and stepped inside, his hand instinctively moving toward his radio to call for backup if necessary. What he saw made him freeze in place. The wardrobe room was indeed occupied, but not by an intruder or unauthorized staff member. Instead, he found Charlotte, the young wardrobe assistant he had seen around the castle on numerous occasions, standing before an open garment bag with several children's outfits spread across the central fitting area. Charlotte's face went pale when she saw James enter the room. She had been so absorbed in examining the intricate details of Princess Charlotte's coronation wardrobe that she had lost track of time. What had started as a quick return visit to double-check some details she thought she might have missed had stretched into hours as she found herself fascinated by the craftsmanship and historical significance of the pieces. "I'm sorry," Charlotte stammered, her voice barely above a whisper. "I know this looks suspicious, but I was asked to do some cataloging work, and I wanted to make sure I had all the measurements correct before tomorrow's meeting with the seamstresses." James studied Charlotte's face carefully. His years of experience in security had taught him to read people, to distinguish between genuine explanations and attempted deceptions. Charlotte's nervousness was obvious, but it seemed to stem from embarrassment at being caught working late, rather than from any malicious intent. Still, the nature of what she was examining made this situation extremely delicate. "What exactly are you cataloging?" James asked, his voice maintaining the professional tone he used when conducting official inquiries. He had noticed the children's garments immediately upon entering the room, and their obvious quality and craftsmanship suggested they were far from ordinary clothing items. Charlotte hesitated, understanding that her answer could have significant consequences. The garments she had been examining were clearly intended to be kept confidential until an appropriate announcement was made. At the same time, lying to a royal guard would be an even more serious offense than her unauthorized late-night examination of the wardrobe. "These are special garments for Princess Charlotte," she admitted quietly. "They appear to be for ceremonial occasions, possibly including a coronation. I noticed them earlier this week and wanted to make sure I understood all the details correctly for my work responsibilities." James stepped closer to examine the garments Charlotte had been studying. Even with his limited knowledge of fashion and royal protocol, he could see that these were extraordinary pieces. The level of detail, the quality of materials, and the obvious care taken in their creation all suggested that they were intended for events of the highest importance. One dress in particular caught James's attention. It was a stunning creation in ivory silk, with hand-embroidered gold thread forming intricate patterns across the bodice. The skirt was full and flowing, designed to create an appropriately regal silhouette even on a child. Matching accessories, including a delicate tiara and specially crafted shoes, completed the ensemble. "Have you discussed these garments with anyone else?" James asked, understanding immediately that the security implications extended far beyond the physical protection of valuable items. The existence of such elaborate ceremonial wear for Princess Charlotte suggested significant upcoming events that had not yet been announced to the public. Charlotte shook her head quickly. "No, I haven't mentioned them to anyone. I understand that they're obviously confidential, and I would never breach that trust. I was just trying to do my job thoroughly." James appreciated Charlotte's honesty, but he also understood that the situation required immediate attention from higher authorities. The discovery of these garments by both Charlotte and now himself created a security situation that needed to be handled carefully and discreetly. "I'm going to need to report this to my supervisor," James explained gently but firmly. Not because you've done anything wrong, necessarily, but because these items appear to be related to significant upcoming events that require careful security coordination. As James examined the various pieces more closely, he began to understand the scope of what was being prepared. This wasn't just one or two special outfits, but an entire wardrobe designed to support Princess Charlotte's participation in multiple high-profile ceremonies. The variety of styles and levels of formality suggested events ranging from intimate family ceremonies to grand public occasions. The implications were staggering. If Princess Charlotte was being prepared for such significant ceremonial roles, it suggested changes in royal protocol and possibly in her official position within the line of succession. James had been present for numerous royal ceremonies during his years of service, and he understood the symbolic importance of every detail, including the clothing worn by participants. Charlotte watched nervously as James continued his examination of the garments. She could see him processing the same realizations that had struck her during her own discovery. These clothes represented more than just beautiful craftsmanship. They were evidence of carefully planned future events that would likely capture the attention of the entire world. "The craftsmanship is incredible," James murmured, almost to himself, as he examined the delicate beadwork on one of the dresses. His comments seemed to break some of the tension in the room, acknowledging the artistic merit of the pieces beyond their security and protocol implications. Charlotte nodded eagerly, grateful for the opportunity to discuss the technical aspects of what she had been studying. "Each piece has been designed with such attention to historical detail. You can see influences from coronation gowns worn by previous generations, but adapted for a contemporary context and a young wearer." As they continued to examine the collection together, both Charlotte and James began to appreciate the enormous planning and coordination that had gone into these preparations. The garments had clearly been in development for months, possibly years, requiring collaboration between historians, designers, seamstresses, and protocol experts. James found himself impressed by Charlotte's knowledge and genuine passion for her work. Her examination of the garments had been thorough and respectful, driven by professional curiosity rather than inappropriate nosiness. At the same time, he couldn't ignore the fact that they had both now gained access to information that was clearly meant to be restricted. "We need to secure these items properly and document exactly what we've both observed," James said, shifting into his official security mode. "This isn't about getting anyone in trouble, but we need to make sure that the appropriate people know who has been exposed to this information." Charlotte nodded, her understanding, though she couldn't help feeling anxious about the potential consequences. She genuinely loved her work in the royal household and had no desire to jeopardize her position or betray the trust that had been placed in her. At the same time, she felt honored to have witnessed the preparation for what promised to be historic events. As James began to carefully return the garments to their protective bags, he and Charlotte worked together in companionable silence. Both understood the gravity of what they had discovered, and both felt the weight of responsibility that came with such knowledge. The trust of the royal family depended on staff members like them maintaining absolute discretion about sensitive information. The experience had given James a new appreciation for the complexity of royal life, beyond the security aspects he typically focused on. The careful choreography of ceremonies, the attention to historical precedent, and the months or years of preparation required for significant events all worked together to maintain traditions that connected the monarchy to centuries of British history. For Charlotte, the evening had reinforced her understanding of the privilege and responsibility that came with her position in the royal household. She was not just caring for beautiful clothes, but serving as a guardian of traditions that would be passed down to future generations. The garments she had been examining would someday be worn by Princess Charlotte at moments that would be remembered for decades to come. As they prepared to secure the wardrobe room and complete the necessary security documentation, both James and Charlotte understood that they had been granted an extraordinary glimpse into the careful preparation that made royal ceremonies possible. Their discretion and professionalism in handling this discovery would be essential to maintaining the trust and security that such preparations required. The following morning brought an atmosphere of heightened activity throughout Windsor Castle. Word of the previous evening's discovery had traveled quickly through the appropriate channels, and by 8 o'clock, Charlotte found herself sitting in the private office of Lady Margaret Thornbury, the Queen's personal secretary, and one of the most senior members of the royal household staff. Lady Margaret was a woman in her early 60s who had spent nearly 4 decades in royal service. Her reputation for discretion, efficiency, and unflappable composure had made her one of Queen Camilla's most trusted advisors. Charlotte had only met her briefly on previous occasions, and sitting across from her now felt both intimidating and oddly reassuring. "Charlotte," Lady Margaret began, her voice warm but serious, "I want you to understand that you are not in any trouble. Sergeant Mitchell has provided a full report of last evening's events, and it's clear that your examination of the wardrobe items was motivated by professional diligence rather than improper curiosity." Charlotte felt a wave of relief wash over her. Though she remained nervous about the implications of her discovery, she had spent much of the night worrying about potential consequences for her career and her future in the royal household. "However," Lady Margaret continued, "your discovery does present us with some unique circumstances that require careful handling. The garments you examined are indeed related to upcoming ceremonial events that have not yet been publicly announced. Your knowledge of these preparations, while accidental, now makes you privy to information of considerable sensitivity." As Lady Margaret spoke, Charlotte began to understand that she was being brought into a circle of trusted confidentiality, rather than being excluded from it. The realization that her professionalism was being recognized rather than questioned filled her with both pride and a deep sense of responsibility. "The items you discovered are part of an extensive wardrobe being prepared for Princess Charlotte's expanded role in upcoming royal ceremonies," Lady Margaret explained. "While the specific details remain confidential, I can tell you that the princess will be taking on ceremonial responsibilities that reflect her position as a senior member of the next generation of the royal family." Charlotte listened with growing fascination as Lady Margaret outlined the broad context of what was being planned. The garments she had examined were just one component of preparations that had been underway for more than a year, involving dozens of staff members, artisans, and protocol experts. The level of planning required for such events was staggering, touching every aspect of royal household operations. Princess Charlotte herself is aware of these preparations, of course, Lady Margaret continued. She has been gradually introduced to her future ceremonial responsibilities in an age-appropriate manner, with careful attention to ensuring that these duties enhance rather than burden her childhood experience. The mention of Princess Charlotte's own involvement in the preparations sparked Charlotte's curiosity about how an 8-year-old would handle such significant responsibilities. Lady Margaret seemed to sense this interest and elaborated on the careful balance being maintained between preparing the young princess for her future role while preserving her childhood. "The princess has shown remarkable composure and genuine interest in learning about royal traditions," Lady Margaret shared. "Her parents, the Prince and Princess of Wales, have been instrumental in ensuring that her preparation is both thorough and appropriate for her age. The fittings for these special garments have been presented as exciting dress-up activities rather than formal obligations." Charlotte found herself imagining Princess Charlotte trying on the beautiful gowns she had examined, perhaps twirling in front of mirrors and delighting in the intricate details of each piece. The thought of the young princess's excitement about wearing such magnificent clothes added a charming human element to what could otherwise seem like an overwhelmingly formal process. "Your background and evident passion for this work have brought you to our attention in a very positive way," Lady Margaret said, surprising Charlotte with this unexpected turn in the conversation. "We have been considering expanding our wardrobe team to better support these upcoming events, and your discretion and professionalism in handling last evening's discovery suggests that you might be well suited for additional responsibilities." Charlotte's heart began to race with excitement. The possibility of taking on greater responsibilities within the royal household, particularly in connection with such historic events, was beyond anything she had dared to hope for when she first started her position. The role would involve direct support for Princess Charlotte's ceremonial wardrobe, working closely with the head seamstresses and protocol advisors to ensure that every detail meets the exacting standards required for royal ceremonies. Lady Margaret explained. "It would also require your absolute discretion about all aspects of the preparations, including details that you may observe but that remain confidential until official announcements are made." The weight of this responsibility was not lost on Charlotte. She would be entrusted with information and responsibilities that could affect the reputation and security of the royal family. At the same time, she would have the opportunity to contribute directly to events that would become part of British royal history. "I would be honored to accept such a role," Charlotte replied, her voice steady despite her excitement. "I understand the importance of discretion, and I'm committed to maintaining the highest standards of professionalism in everything I do." Lady Margaret smiled, clearly pleased with Charlotte's response. "There will be additional security clearances and training requirements, of course. You'll also be working more directly with Princess Charlotte during fittings and preparation sessions, which requires a particular set of skills in managing both the technical aspects of wardrobe work and the unique considerations involved in working with a young member of the royal family." The prospect of working directly with Princess Charlotte filled Charlotte with both excitement and a healthy sense of nervousness. She had observed the young princess during public appearances and had always been impressed by her poise and confidence, but the opportunity to contribute to her preparation for such important ceremonies would be an entirely new level of responsibility. "The upcoming events will likely generate significant public and media interest," Lady Margaret continued. "Princess Charlotte's expanded ceremonial role represents an important step in her preparation for future responsibilities, and the public will be watching closely to see how she handles these new duties." Charlotte began to understand the broader significance of the preparations she had discovered. These weren't just beautiful clothes being created for special occasions. They were tangible symbols of the monarchy's continuity and the careful preparation of its next generation. Princess Charlotte's successful participation in upcoming ceremonies would help establish her credibility and confidence for the decades of royal duty that lay ahead of her. "The craftsmanship standards for these garments are extraordinary," Lady Margaret noted. "Each piece must not only be beautiful, but also practical for a young girl participating in lengthy ceremonies. The designers have had to balance historical authenticity with contemporary comfort and mobility requirements." This comment reminded Charlotte of the technical challenges she had observed in examining the garments. Creating formal wear that could withstand hours of ceremonial activities while maintaining its appearance and allowing a child to move gracefully was no small feat. The skill and creativity required from the seamstresses and designers was remarkable. "Your role will also involve maintaining detailed records of all fittings, alterations, and final preparations," Lady Margaret explained. "These records will become part of the historical documentation of these events, so accuracy and attention to detail will be essential." The realization that her work would contribute to historical records gave Charlotte's new responsibilities an added dimension of importance. Future historians studying these ceremonies would rely on the documentation she helped create to understand the careful preparation that made such events possible. As their conversation continued, Charlotte learned more about the timeline for the upcoming events and her role in the final preparations. There would be multiple ceremonies over the coming months, each requiring different levels of formality and different ceremonial garments. The coordination required to ensure that Princess Charlotte was properly prepared for each event while maintaining her regular education and family time was complex and demanding. "One final point," Lady Margaret said as their meeting drew to a close. "Your discretion extends not only to the specific details of what you've observed but also to your new role itself. While your colleagues will know that you've taken on additional responsibilities, the specific nature of your work with Princess Charlotte's ceremonial wardrobe must remain confidential until the appropriate announcements are made." Charlotte nodded her understanding, feeling the full weight of the trust being placed in her. She would be working at the heart of some of the most significant royal ceremonies in recent years, contributing to events that would be watched by millions of people around the world. The responsibility was enormous, but so was the honor of being selected for such important work. As Charlotte left Lady Margaret's office, she reflected on how dramatically her life had changed in just a few days. What had started as an accidental discovery in a wardrobe room had led to an opportunity she never could have imagined. She would be playing a direct role in preparing Princess Charlotte for ceremonial responsibilities that would shape her future as a member of the royal family. The young princess herself was probably unaware of how many people were working behind the scenes to ensure her success in these upcoming ceremonies. Charlotte felt privileged to be joining that dedicated team, contributing her skills and passion to events that would become treasured memories for Princess Charlotte and historic moments for the nation. Walking through the castle corridors with her new responsibilities weighing on her mind, Charlotte understood that she had been given more than just a career opportunity. She had been entrusted with a role in preserving and continuing traditions that connected the present monarchy to centuries of British royal history. The garments she would help prepare would carry Princess Charlotte through moments that would be remembered long after Charlotte herself had retired from royal service. The extraordinary discovery in Queen Camilla's wardrobe room had opened a door to a future Charlotte never could have imagined. Filled with responsibility, privilege, and the opportunity to contribute to the grand continuity of royal tradition,